now that we made the determination of where the end of the sheetrock is, where the end of that sheetrock is, we've already cut this too, as I explained to you. Now we've got to figure out what to do over here. As I look at this, there's some a watermark here, but you also have to pay attention to what you're doing. Stand back if you have to. Sometimes you get up too close to the ceiling, you may not see it. Stand back down, take a look at it. Make sure you get some light in here too. And I got just this cheap construction light down here, and it cost me about 10 bucks at the hardware store. You probably need to get something like that. It really will help you with your projects, by the way. Okay, so I know, here's the watermark, here's the last watermark, and so I know I've got to go at least that far. Okay, so I'm going to hold it here, pull your tape measure out, and that gives me about 38 inches, maybe 37 and a half inches to here, and I would want to go over a little bit further, maybe to 40 inches. Okay, but I noticed up above there's a big main glulam beam going across here, and that's holding up these joists. These are 2x6 ceiling joists. They're spanning this direction, and they're not part of a truss system for the roof. These are standalone ceiling joists. These are only designed to hold up the sheetrock ceiling, so there's no way one could have spanned all the way across. They ran a beam all the way across here, and this ties into that beam. So that's another reason to poke your head up here, double check and see what you're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure to the edge of that beam and see how far we are over to here. I got 41 and a half, and initially I was going to cut the patch about 40 inches. Well, I can cut it to the beam if I want, but before I do that, I'm going to check on the other side. Maybe just in case they install this beam crooked or something like that. So I'm going to measure this. I got 41 and a half. And you might want to poke your head up there too. Make sure you're measuring at the right place. Last thing you want to do is make an assumption. I already got it up there. Poke your head up there. Make sure your tape measure is going to hit exactly where you want it to. Okay. And I got 41 3/8 there. And I think I said 41 and a half here.
Yeah.
But if you want to double check, make sure you got your tape in the right place. You look up there. I got 41 and a half. Okay, so that's only 1/8 of an inch off. Now, so I'm going to make a determination of cutting it right along that beam. Okay? Now, if there was no beam, what would I do? I would measure over from here that way, 40 inches, 40 inches over there, put a nail, put my chalk line up there, and do the same thing that I already showed you. Okay? So, I'm going to get back to work and cut this out and see where we go from there. I knew I forgot to tell you something. Okay, so my opening, if you watch this, that opening is going to be slightly smaller over here than on this side over here, only by 1/8 of an inch. When you cut sheetrock, the last thing you want to do is to try to cut that sheetrock so tight that it's going to fit the first time. Because let me tell you, if you do that, 99 out of 100 times, 95 out of 100 times, your sheetrock is not going to fit. You're going to try to wedge it up in there and tap it up there and hold it up there and try to cut out a little bit, a sliver with your sheetrock knife or something. You always, whenever you measure sheetrock, you always want to deduct maybe 1/8 of an inch or so in case something's slightly out of whack, or if you cut it crooked, or if something's haywire, you can fit it up in there usually on the first time. The webbing tape that I'm going to install, that's fine if there's a slight little gap, 1/8 of an inch gap, a 3/16 gap, 16th, whatever. You know, the main thing is that you don't try to wedge it up there or have to cut it 2 or 3 times to get a perfect fit. It's just not going to happen. Look at this. This is how your arms are going to be after a while, but hey, it washes off, and that's another reason why I use gloves, because I don't want to get my hands all crinkly and messed up or eaten up. It's always a good idea. Invest in some gloves, and like I say, these are nice and thin, easy to work with. You don't want something that's too thick and bulky to work with, all right? I can just leave these on, use my pencil, use my sheetrock knife, use my tape measure on them, and all that. You don't have to get black. There's blue, there's gray, there's other colors, okay? So look for them at the store. Here's another thing you could do. Yeah, you could cut each one of these bays out and cut it like I was showing you and all that. But because you know where the beam is now, we're going to cut up right up to the edge of the beam. I'm going to go ahead and measure this again. And I thought, yeah, 41 3/8. Okay, so now reposition my ladder. Oop. I'm going to go 41 3/8. And if you can't hold your tape up there, eyeball where 41 3/8 is going to be, and put a mark. And if that's not exact, chances are it may not. Now you can look at this, and I'm at 41 and almost 1/4, and so I know I can go over to there, and I'm right at 41 3/8, almost. Okay, so now I can do that, and I know exactly where that was going to go. In case you can't readjust your ladder or whatever. Okay, so now I guess I can, while I'm here at this corner, I can poke a nail up there. I'm just going to eyeball it beyond just a little bit. Actually, no, I can't. Can't do that. Stick with me here. I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to run the nail just along this edge. Because this is going to be for my chalk line, remember. I can hold that up there, and that's just going to go along here. So from here over, I'm just going to use this as my straight edge. I'm going to pull it over to where it needs to go and snap it. That's going to get me pretty close to the edge of the joist, right? Roll this up. I like this chalk line. If you didn't have a chalk line, you need to get one. That really helps if you're doing stuff on your own, let's say. Okay, so now I've got my chalk line there, and I know that's exactly where the beam is, and I can poke it up right there. Now I got to get this line here. A little bit finagling around when you're up on a ladder, and that's just what you got to work with. You know, unless you got a scaffold or something like that. I'm gonna measure this again, 41 1/2. You know, I always like to measure twice, cut once, okay? Now see, I'm gonna have to readjust my ladder. And I don't like measuring this way because it's harder to do for me because I'm right-handed. I like to hold my tape in my left hand. Okay, so I got 41 1/2. I'm just looking at 41 1/2. Keeping my eye right on where 41 1/2 is. Usually you can just look at a little point on the ceiling, a little knob if you got spray texture, and I'm right at 41 1/2. See, your eyeball sometimes is better than you think. Okay, so now, you know what I'm going to do now, right? I'm just going to line it up for the edge of this, just beyond, so I got a place. This is just going to hold my chalk line, and I've got my point here. Okay, I'm going to hold it. I'm just going to line up from there. See, because my chalk line is nice and straight. Okay, right there. Snap it. Nice little helper. What would you do if you didn't have a chalk line? I didn't have a chalk line. I'm not quite sure how I would do this. I'm so used to using it. Now, so I can't reach that, I didn't have to really put that one because I can use the other side, right? Whichever way is easiest for you. chalk line is only going to hold one end. And it's got an end on it, and the end has a little tip on there in case you want to overhang it on something. But in this case, I'm flipping it upside down, so I get that nice and tight. I push it up tight to the ceiling, hold the tape or hold the string tight so it doesn't fall down on itself, see? And I hold that right there, hold it up there, and snap it. All right, now that's where I'm going to cut the rest of it, and I'm probably going to cut on the inside of that line. This is right where the edge is, so you don't want to get over the edge too much and then find out how come my saw is going hard. It's going hard because you're hitting the edge of the beam here, going across this way. It's hitting the edge of the joist here. So I just cut it kind of on this side, or just leave it just a hair. I can always clean it up if I have to. It just makes it cut a little bit easier. All right. Hey, if you got to take a break when you're cutting this, so be it. But, you know, a patch about this size, I'll do with this little saw like this. You know, it takes a little bit out of you, but it's all right. Yeah, you know what I'm going to do next, don't you? Hold it this way so it doesn't fly all over. Because I got remnants of insulation on here too. Here's a nail that's stuck up. I'm just going to bend that down. Okay. There. Okay. Woo. All right, at this point, any exposed nails that didn't come out with the sheetrock, you're going to want to pull. Sometimes these come out, but in this case, most of them did not come out. Why? Because that sheetrock was wet and these nails got rusty and they don't want to slip out as easy. Okay? If I see any little sheetrock paper here, I just cut that off. Now I see where this is. I can clean this up right along where the backing was up here. Use this as my guide, my template. And incidentally, do I need a nail bag to do this job? Probably not, but if you're going to start doing projects on your own, I would highly recommend you getting a nail bag. But probably not one like this. This one's got one little pouch on the side. I'm talking about the pouches on both sides, and there's an area in the back to put your hammer and stuff. This was an old school one from years ago. Most nail bags, you only had one side. Okay, and then you can swivel that around from left to right if you're left-handed, right-handed, however you feel more comfortable with it. And that's what I'm using because that's what I've got around. But next time I need a nail bag, if I'm going to go buy one, I'll get the other type. Well, here's our opening. This is where we've got to put our new piece. And how are we going to attach this now? We've got the 2x6s that go across here, so this is going to hold the middle, but we don't have anything here, we don't have anything here. Now, if you would have thought, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to cut it like Joe, I'm going to measure where the edge is, and I'm going to measure over 3/4 of an inch, get into the center of the 2x6, and I don't need any backing at all. I'm going to do that. Well, that's very difficult to do. Lots of times the nails are in your way, the screws are in their way, your sheetrock knife gets all messed up that way, and even then, how straight of an edge are you going to get? So what I like to do is I just cut it tight to that. Then I've got to take some material, either 2x4, 2x6, a 1x2, 1x4, anything. We're going to screw on the side of here, just flush with the bottom of the wood, so we got enough room for the sheetrock. And that piece, because this piece is up here, I only have to make it 41 inches. I can make it 41 and a half to there. I can make it 46. whatever, that piece is just going to hold up this edge. So when I look over here, I'm going to do the same thing along this one. Okay? Now on this side here, well, over here you don't see anything. Do you have to put 2x6 blocks across here, 2x4 blocks across here? No. You don't have to do that because they didn't do that before, and that's how it's designed. Half-inch sheetrock is designed to span 16 inches without bowing. Okay, so that's why they used half-inch here, not 5/8. They could have used 5/8 sheetrock on the ceiling, and then the joists could have been 24 inches apart. Okay, it's just designed to hold the sheetrock. If you had joists every 2 feet on center, 24-inch on center, and you put half-inch sheetrock up here, you're going to have a tendency of your sheetrock bowing in between the joints. Eventually, you may think, oh, that's good enough, and later on you look at your ceiling, you think, my word, where are all those sags come in, or where the joint is, it's zipsy doodle. You don't want to ever do that, okay? But for our purpose, we don't need any backing over here. The same thing goes over here. Once we get these two side pieces, we really don't need any backing over here, even though I do have backing where the beam is. Right here, I could put little pieces across there, but it's not necessary. Okay? That's going to be our next step. But before we do that, I got to get something to eat. Hey, so Uncle Eddie, are you learning anything on this project so far?
Oh, yeah.
Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Because I know it's your ceiling. When I get done with it, I'm hoping it's going to be all right for you.
It'll be all right.
Okay, so there's our patch right there. And it's coming along good. I'm going to get something to eat real quick. And after that, we're going to take a look at this other little water damaged area right here. Now, why is there a water damaged area here? Well, if you can imagine where those joists are, the roof rafters go the same direction. There was a leak right up above that, and then the rafter came on down this direction. And the water was hitting the edge of a rafter, and it was running alongside the rafter, and eventually it found its way down on top of the sheetrock ceiling, and this is where it dripped. Yeah, the leak was over there, and the water ended up over here. So anytime you have a leak, look around and look at your joists and rafters and see if there's other areas that might need to be attended to.